there, and welcome to the Seven Figure Authorpreneur Podcast, where we empower authors with tools, resources, and inspiration to build prosperous book brands. And today we are interviewing our mental health expert, Casandra Merritt. How are you?
I'm good. I am well.
As always, it's so good to have you here, and we're excited about another powerful episode. Today we'll be covering creative burnout. What is it and how to recover from it? Woo! Yes, I love this. Now, guys, I know I'm excited, and this is a real serious topic, but the reason why I'm expressing that I'm happy about the conversation is because burnout is usually something that takes place in secrecy and in private, and people feel ashamed by it. But we're putting it out in the atmosphere so you can become safe in your conversations and get the help you need and the support you need to keep progressing in your goals. Let's get started. So, Casandra, how would you say mental health affects creativity?
Well, that's a great question. It affects mental health. Well, creativity affects mental health, I feel like, versus mental health just affecting it. Because when you are exhausted, or you're just fatigued or tired, or just possibly overloaded, it affects your mental well-being, which also affects your creativity. So it prevents you from thinking or performing.
So how would you rather define creative burnout in writing?
Well, it's a state of exhaustion that affects one's ability to think or perform creatively. In its simplest terms, it's exhaustion. And when we're tired or we've taken on so much, it causes us to be weighed down, which causes us to feel burnt out, like we have nothing left.
Have you ever, as an author, experienced that?
Oh, absolutely. Taking on too many clients at one time, or just, between going to school, trying to have a family, trying to still just maintain my own insanity. Yes, absolutely. I have felt burnout. And when I feel burnout, I don't want to write. I don't want to think about writing. So it's a real thing.
I certainly can agree with that as well. Can you help our listeners, Casandra, by defining or describing some of the signs and symptoms people will want to become aware of so that they can recognize creative burnout before it impacts them?
Well, I'm going to give you three symptoms or signs that I think are some of the top big ones when it comes to creative writing, which is an increase of self-doubt. That's huge, because that's a sign that you're headed down a lane that is probably either one, going to take you somewhere you don't want to go, or two, it's going to just make you fall within yourself and decide that you're not going to do anything, which is similar to what I was describing about what I felt. Kind of like self-doubt. I can't get all this done. So you take the easy route, which was for me, just don't do any writing. So another one is increased irritability. Sometimes this can be not associated to your writing, but when you're irritable about life or things that are happening around you, that irritability keeps you from writing. You become frustrated and decide that you're just going to give up. You're not going to do it. So you have to watch that. It looks like, I was just a little agitated, but you have to look deeper into it, because when it starts to affect your creativity in your writing, you're going to see it. And of course, it can affect other areas, but specifically talking about writing, you will see it. You will decide that you don't want to read. You don't want to think about projects. You don't want to think about books. You'll hear it. Or when someone's talking to you about it, you start to squinch in your face, making excuses for why you don't write. So you have to look at all of those type of things. And then there's that physical fatigue. That's like mental and physical exhaustion that is deeply intertwined into everything that you want to do. It makes you feel weary. It makes you feel drained and feel like there is no end to this.
Them were some good descriptions, guys. I hope you wrote those down. And I actually want to do something a little different in our conversation today. Casandra, I'm going to give you a real life example without using any names or anything like that. But I'm aware of an author who is literally been writing their book for about 5 years. They are literally on the final chapter and have not finished. What do you think's occurring there?
I think they're struggling with motivation. I think they are struggling with motivation, which, it's a part of burnout, and it's probably in the self-doubt range. I'm so sorry. I feel like that they're probably thinking more about the outcome versus thinking about just writing. Just write. And sometimes people are afraid of finishing. Now, I know we're not talking about that, but sometimes that burnout will come and you so fixated on what you think is going to happen versus just letting it happen, that alone can cause burnout.
That's so good. And I'm sure there are probably other listeners who maybe it's not been 5 years or a year, but they find these unplanned pauses in their projects and they don't know how to get back on track. They don't know how to get the fire burning again. And we're going to go and explore here soon some ways you can do that, guys. So make sure you keep listening. But before we get there, Casandra, I'd like to go through a few more questions because I'm coming from the perspective of a author, and they're like, okay, I get the symptoms and the signs. Those make sense. But how do I evaluate my own personal self when burnout may be on the horizon?
Well, I put a couple of bullets here for me because I really wanted to focus on that as you just asked. One of the ways that you have to assess yourself, or I think is a good way to assess yourself, is to examine when you first started to feel like I'm tired, I'm weary. And everybody uses different words. So you find that word that is associated with your writing, you'll find exactly where it started. And so to go along with that, has your output slowed down and qualified your work? Which means that you've slowed down to the point that you can't even qualify your work of what you've done because you're so fixated on thinking you're finishing, but you're not finishing. And so you're just stuck in that place of self-doubt. And so again, you have to think about where is the output slowing down that's keeping you from going. That's one thing to assess yourself. And do you feel anxious or overwhelmed? That's something to ask yourself. Am I anxious? Am I worried? Am I overwhelmed by this? And there are ways to come back with that. We're going to share that later, I'm sure. And are you having a hard time remembering what it is you're wanting to say? Those are some small things to do with writing that you are important to us writing.
I have experienced a few of the points you mentioned, and I'm just like, wow, that's really good insight. And I've always been taught in life that what you have the power to understand, you have the ability to change. That's why it's very important that you understand. And here, Casandra, she shares about ways to assess and evaluate yourself, because you don't have to burn out creatively. You can mitigate that by taking some steps to get back on track or refresh and revive yourself. And I'm sure Casandra will share that here as we get closer to the end of the interview. But here's my next question. We've went over what is burnout in writing. We've talked about how to recognize the signs and symptoms. We've also discussed, hey, how do I assess myself and if I'm headed in that direction? Now I'd like to go over what is the cause for creative burnout in writing.
Oh wow, that is good. Great question. There are many causes to burnout. A few of them being with starting with being aware of what led to you even feeling like you're burnt out. And I know there's another question coming that talks about the two different things, but right now you have to ask yourself, what am I aware of that led me to feeling like I'm burning out? Because you could be in a place where you just need rest, or you probably need to set some boundaries and some things in your life to keep you consistent so you are not feeling burned out. So those are a couple things.
Those are really good ones. And it's important to share, guys, that that's not an exhaustive list. There are other reasons that contribute to creative burnout. We're sharing some of the more common ones that a lot of people struggle with. And I think even in this next question, guys, this one will really help some people out. Casandra, is there a difference in creative burnout and writer's block?
Absolutely. I feel like there's a difference. Writer's burnout is a state of exhaustion that makes you unwilling and unable to do what you love best, and can lead you to questioning your entire identity as a writer. And writer's block, in the way that I understand it, is characterized as an inability to just write. You won't write. And so there can be extreme manifestations of this, or it could just be mild manifestations of this. I feel like at one point in my own life, I had an extreme manifestation of this. I started strong, and then suddenly I had a big drop. And that big drop was discouraging, because I can remember looking back and thinking back that it was because I got to a point in my writing course that I was in, that I didn't want to do the work anymore. I was like, just didn't want to do the work anymore. So I went from an extreme place to like, bam. And that took almost, I don't know. I know over 10 years before I actually did anything else. And that is so important, because you can get so stuck in a burnout that you don't even realize that it was a burnout.
My goodness, I'm sure that some of the things that Casandra just shared is absolutely resonating with many of you out there, guys. I have been there as well, Casandra, where I love I love what you said about writer's block is you're not writing, and it's very different than you can't write.
Right. That's it.
And guys, I need you to get that, because writer's block is not the lack of ability. It is the lack of creativity. You being willing to give to a point beyond what you're used to in writing, so you can get beyond where you're at in writing. And when it comes to creative burnout, something got damaged because of the reasons that Casandra has described: the need for rest, the need to refresh yourself, the need to be poured into, or whatever it may be. And we have to understand the difference. And the reason why we have to understand the difference, because each one of those things have something different that will resolve it. You can't treat, using mental health language, you can't treat writer's block with what is needed for a creative burnout recovery. And likewise, you can't do it the opposite way. So, guys, we want to help you with this next question to be able to actually even discern some differences. So, Casandra, how does an author discern the difference between a creative burnout and just the need for some natural rest?
I think while they both sound similar and probably have they affect some similar things, which they affect the physical, mental, and emotional, and both. I think that your body almost begins to tell you when it's time to rest. I mean, your eyes are heavy, you start to feel weary, your words start to run together. While you can have irritability in writer's block, you can have irritability in your health. You have to really listen to your body. If that's the best way I can say it. You have to listen to your body, because everybody's body is different and it speaks differently. And then I think just the burnout itself, again, it's taking on too many things, taking on too many projects, trying to, if you know you need 4 weeks to write, then you almost have to take 4 weeks to write. Some people are just dead set on getting it done, and they can get it done. But you have to set some extreme measures for what you're going to do to not fall in one or the other. We should have a balance in our life.
You heard the word, guys. There should be a balance in your life. So good, so good, so good. Now, as we prepare our listeners to really walk away and start doing some things differently in their own journey and avoiding this thing called creative burnout, Casandra, could you describe 3 things an author can do to recover after a creative burnout setback?
Well, one of the number one things I would say, set firm boundaries. What does that look like? I'm sure you're asking. A boundary that is firmly set, it's like your toolbox to help you know where not to go and what not to and where to go. Have a clear idea of your perfect daily routine. How many hours you're going to work? What's going to be the routine? Am I going to get up early and write? Or am I going to write late? Am I going to rest during the day and I'm going to work during the night? But you have to set boundaries, and you have to have an end to the end. So sometimes we don't have an end. We just think, oh, well, when I get finished, I get finished. Nope. That's a straight setup for almost putting yourself into a burnout state. You have to set boundaries, firm boundaries for yourself and for others around you. So put that in your toolbox, your writer's toolbox.
So sorry. If I could, I know I don't typically do this, but if it doesn't throw you off, I would love for you to address a burning question that just came to my head.
Yes.
I think some people feel like the right thing to do in response to burnout is to give up because they're afraid of what burnout has already cost them and what it'll take to get beyond it. What would you say to that person?
I would say, look at it like, okay, I just discovered something big about myself. And that thing that I discovered is making me feel like I want to give up. So now I need to readjust. And, in our world, in the mental health world, we say just readjust, realign. You identify with it, you own it, and then you figure out a plan to readjust. But don't give up. Don't quit. Sometimes you have to take a break, but set an end date to the break. Take a week off, take a couple days off, and then realign yourself and come back with set boundaries. That's now going to help you be productive because now you laid out a plan for your day. You know when you get up, you're going to start your day, you're going to start your routine, and you are already set 4 hours or 2 hours in that day. And don't let anything change that unless it's in a medical emergency.
That was so good. Wow. I guess we can go on now to point number 2.
Is keep it simple and structured. What do I mean by that? Declutter your workspace. Ooh, if I can't tell you anything else. This girl over here, she is known for cluttering her workspace. So you have to declutter your workspace. It'll help you create a calmer mindset because when there's a lot of stuff around you, sometimes it's an overload. And while you don't think the stuff is bothering you, it really is bothering you because you're so fixated on, well, let me move this, let me do this. And so you're losing time, you're losing energy, you're losing a whole lot of creativity because you're thinking about putting all this other stuff into a creative place. So then do the same with your work day. So if your work day is Tuesday and Thursday, definitely keep it simple and keep it structured.
because I run my business and work from home. So I definitely have an office, but when I walk to the bathroom, I'm forced rather to face some of maybe my own clutteredness. And instead of working, sometimes I'm like, oh, let me put this away, or let me sweep this up, or let me put a load of laundry away. And I have found that it does steal time from me throughout the day. And the more organized I become, the less I become distracted when I need to take a break. So I appreciate you, Casandra, for sharing those things. And I am sure our listeners do as well. Guys, these were really practical things and ways that you can understand creative burnout, what it is, and most importantly, how to recover, because you can bounce back. As Casandra said, you don't have to give up. You don't have to be stuck. You can get back into that zone. You can get back to writing. You can finish your books. You can finish your goals. And I'm going to invite Casandra to just say a quick prayer for us as we close this episode out.
Okay, and when I close out, I'm going to give you a resource that I want to share with you guys too. So, Father, I thank you for strategically helping us when it comes to burnout and creative burnout and writer's block. Lord, I know that you have created our minds, and they're brilliant minds, and they're just always racing and thinking of the newest and the greatest things to say. But God, I thank you for giving us a place of rest in our minds where we are able to write fluently and that we're able to distinguish what it is we need to say. Lord, help us to declutter our day, declutter our space, declutter our thoughts, and be able to home in and just be creative with great energy, great strength. And even when burnout comes, because it will come, God, show us how to strategically realign, readjust ourselves, and fit right in where we need to be in that time of being creative. In Jesus' name.
Amen. Amen. And what was that resource you wanted to share, Casandra?
Yes. I wanted to share that there is a great Dr. Sandra Smith. It's Dalton Smith. It's spelled Doctor, of course, and Sandra, Saundra, Dalton Smith. She's a physician and a researcher and author, speaker, all that great stuff. But she has this great quiz that's called restquiz.com. And it shows you the different areas of where you're needing to have rest. And it talks about that creative rest, because there is a creative rest that you all need as creators. And so she also has a great book on Amazon for those that don't want to take the quiz. And it's called Sacred Rest, Rediscover Your Life, Renew Your Energy, and Restore Your Sanity.
Oh my goodness, I might need to buy up that book right there and run through that quiz. But any hootie root, guys, you know what time it is, guys. It is time to implement. It is time to execute, and it is time for us to prosper together. Until next time.